I've had artists die mid-campaign. I still get emails. I got one yesterday from Russian kids pretending to be my ex-colleagues at First Access, asking if I've got any Peep files still that I can send them because they've lost access to the drive. It's weird. Job came about because I've been working on Papa Roach and Five Finger Death Punch at Warner ADA on behalf of 11/7. I was their label rep. The record for Papa Roach was Fear, and we absolutely knocked it out of the park. We sold a bunch. We did a really good job. And after that, I was approached by Lewis, who's the brother of the owner. You know, I was young and cocky at the time, so I was like, yeah, I can do it. But actually, you can't do everything. You may think you can. And guess what happens when you take that attitude all the time? You get burnt. I joined First Access to be part of the team that basically running the in-house label again, like the 11/7 setup. Lil Peep, who I met once, but was heavily involved in the campaign in terms of UK operations. The artist died before we could get to the end of the campaign. What an incredible artist. What a devastating story.
That was a whole new sort of wave of music when
it was game changer. Yeah. A generation of music fans were born off the back of Lil Peep. And not every artist can say that that's happened to them, but to Lil Peep it certainly did.
Good morning, thanks for being here, man.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
There's probably quite a lot for us to catch up on, but to start off with, can you just tell us how you got into music?
Long story, so I'll keep it as succinct as I possibly can. I was at college doing business studies, economics, politics, first year college. And I had always had an interest in music, not playing it. I was fascinated by the music industry, actually. Yeah. It stemmed, as a lot of people, and I appreciate I'm a bit older than you, but approximately our age, from Drive-Thru Records.
Yeah, man.
Huge Drive-Thru kid. And they were an approachable label. So you felt like you could reach out and say hi. And, you know, I did street team stuff.
Yeah.
That manifested itself eventually, this interest in music, I mean, into setting up a website, which has a name, which I won't say now because it's embarrassing.
Say it, we can bleep it. I want to know what it is.
Well, it was called teenspot.com, which sounds really dodgy now. but this was 2000. And I ran the music section. Well, I was half my site, but I ran the music section primarily. Sorry, hitting the table there. I ran the music section of this website, which enabled me to be in contact with publicists and interview bands. And I thought I wanted to work in PR. And then my mother died. What this resulted in was me stopping what I was doing at college, going back and doing a whole nother round of college, but this time doing media, English literature and stuff I was far more passionate about, whilst also pursuing my interest in music, which then eventually meant that I was able to come to university in London and do music management at London Metropolitan, which didn't finish because I actually ended up getting a job at Warner Brothers in the catalogue department, which I loved, 1 year into uni. So I started writing reviews. I met a lot of industry people. I spotted pretty early what I wanted to do, which was become a product manager. And I ended up getting my dream job at Warner Brothers, Warner Music Group, pretty early on. So it was an interesting time and a long time ago now.
Was that working at ADA?
No, so ADA is a distribution company which is owned by Warner Music Group. But before ADA, I worked at Rhino, which is the catalogue department. Right. So I actually was moved internally by the boss who oversaw both departments, because what was emerging around 2010 was the concept of label services. And I'd been working with artists like the Smiths, so specifically with Johnny Marr, doing loads of great stuff. I won a Music Week award for a box set project, which I did, which is a huge accomplishment. Lives happily on our mantelpiece at home now.
Yes, amazing, man.
But when Johnny had a new record coming, he didn't want to put it out on the catalogue label. He wanted it to be frontline. There wasn't really a mechanism for him to do that at Warner's because, you know, the frontline labels, although they had Warner Brothers in particular, Atlantic being the potential other option, all had huge respect for Johnny, didn't exactly fit with Deftones or Ed Sheeran, which was going on over there. So I actually was moved internally to ADA and told to set up Warner Music Artists and Label Services. which is what I did. So ADA came second.
That's amazing. So you made that move then to set that up. What did that actually entail? Like, how did you set it up?
So that has to be prefaced with the concept that ADA existed and was already essentially doing label services, but what it wasn't doing was artist deals. It was label deals. So to say I set up Warner Music Artist Label Services is absolutely correct in the sense that it was just me under my boss, Dan, who's now the head of YouTube Music, EMEA, figuring out how exactly we release music artist projects through a distribution system that's set up for labels. To explain what I mean by that, when you're a record label, we're using a distributor, you generally have everything done. You take it to your distributor and they handle the retail and the release pipeline stuff.
Yeah.
That isn't how artists work. If you're just dealing with an artist and a manager and they're used to working with a label and then you send them to a distributor, that's not going to end well because distributors are like hands off and artists and managers want you to be hands on. That's what labels do. So what it really entailed was navigating a pretty stiff major label system on behalf of an independent artist that happened to be using our systems. But it's made very easy when the artist you're working with is Johnny Marr.
Yeah.
And indeed, the next thing I did was Suede. And the next thing I did was Orbital. All legendary artists of which you could walk into a room at any major label and ask, maybe it's a bit different now, but then you could certainly do it and say, anyone interested in these artists? And someone's going to say, F yeah. So yeah, navigating the system. And by that, I mean, unearthing the team that would work it, and then working out how we would make that work financially internally, because there's no way you can just pay, you can't pay internally. It doesn't work like that. Right. So yeah, it was politics was the answer to your question.
Working with those major bands, then doing that, what was your actual day-to-day with those bands?
So we can pick this up from the Rhino days, and actually from what I wanted to be from my university 1 year and college time was a product manager. And product managers are the unsung heroes of the music business. Any other business, you'd be called a project manager. And product manager refers back to the days when, and actually music still is referred to as a product by labels because it's the product the business sells, clearly. But your product manager is your day-to-day contact at the label that coordinates the publicity, coordinates the promotions, not does the promotions or publicity, but works with the teams. You also have responsibility for handling stock manufacture. If you've got merchandise involved, that as well. You're also handling the marketing. You're also balancing the books with the finance team and the P&L, which means that, you know, depending on the label you work at, and depending on the size of company you work at, often the product manager is also the A&R person for the project. The smaller the company, the less likelihood that there are separate teams. So actually you end up having people wearing many hats. In fact, a friend of mine has set up a company called Many Hats because this is exactly what they do. It's the equivalent of the day-to-day manager, but at the label, and you have your fingers in many different pies.
So which campaigns then stand out to you as being the ones that you are most involved with?
Or most involved with, or most happy with?
Let's do both. Which ones are you most unhappy with?
There are always projects, like when you work at a label, you don't, and it's not your label, you don't really, in fact, this is a really important point for anyone in music. You're not always going to be working on the things that you are necessarily interested in. Yeah. It's important, and I think this is something which I'm particularly good at. You find the positives, you find what energizes you about the project, and then you zoom in on that, and then actually you use that energy, you kick that energy back out to the rest of the campaign. And actually, music marketing isn't particularly hard. It's often about getting people, it's a politics game. It's getting people to agree to do something and then getting them to do it. That is the be all and end all of it. Yeah. When you're working at a major label, you often will be given projects which, I mean, I worked on Steps. I did a Steps Christmas album. Nice. It was amazing. It was amazing. at the same time as doing a Steps Christmas album, I was also working with Johnny Marr.
Yeah.
Now, it wasn't a particularly cool thing for Johnny Marr to know that his product manager was also doing Steps, right? However, it's an amazing experience being at a company where you get given such a breadth of projects. Now, there are a couple. The Smiths one, this box set is huge, right? The one that I won the Music Week Award for has 25 7-inch singles. It's got 8 vinyl albums, 12-inch, of which 2 are doubles.
Right.
So that's 12 pieces of vinyl. It's also got 8 CD albums included in it. It's huge. Weighs a ton. So winning an award for that was amazing. However, Morrissey declared it's delightful, darling. However, then slagged it off in the press. But I think one of my favourite projects which I ever worked on was Frankie Valli. So the man behind a million songs that you know, Cherry Baby, Big Girls Don't Cry. There's a million Frankie Valli songs that everyone will know, and I could only remember 2 on the spot. But I took hit the mic, sorry. But I took Frankie Valli comes to town every time there was a new Jersey Boys lead singer.
Okay.
Because they're playing him. So Frankie came over, and we were doing a best of Frankie Valli record, which I don't think anyone's going to ever tell you that they're 18 years old and want to work in the catalogue department. And no 18-year-old is going to say their favourite artist is Frankie Valli. Certainly I didn't, and he wasn't. However, when you realise you're going to dinner that night with one of the all-time greatest songwriters that your mum knows every song and has made such a cultural impact on the world, it humbles you and is amazing. So this is a good story. I took Frankie took me technically to see him on stage, his new protege, if you will, and the entire England squad having to turn up at the theatre that night. And after the performance, I said to Rio Ferdinand, who sat in front of me, "Hey, would you like to meet the real Frankie?" To which he turned around and said, "Who? You just watched a 2-hour play about the man, dude. Come on." So he obviously wasn't paying attention. But Frankie Valli, that's really important to me, that project. There's more. I'll show the question.
So, I was if that job was so great, how come you had left?
Leaving a major label, leaving any company, obviously happens for a number. Everyone's story is different, and people leave for different reasons. I left Warner because I'd hit a glass ceiling. I've been approached by an independent label, which I was label managing at ADA anyway, to go and run their business across Europe, which would expand my knowledge, expand my expertise, but also they needed what I could do at that point, and I needed a place where I could grow. So when I was offered an opportunity to leave, I think it was the right decision. Sometimes I think, do I regret making that choice, because it's led, a very different path had I stayed. But look at what's happening at the major labels right now. Would I still be there? Probably not.
Was that 11/7?
That was 11/7,
Yeah,
correct.
'cause I remember, because that was when we had the weekly club in London. You were coming to that a lot. I remember you being like crazy excited about that job.
Yeah. Yep. Well, you have to put it in context of major labels are machines, and you can be creative and it's exciting. There's a lot of showing off, and there's a lot of problems with everything, but I actually think they're incredible places to work. I loved my time at major label, and anyone that thinks that people at major labels aren't music lovers and music fans at their heart are just wrong.
Yeah.
But it was a time in my life, and actually having been engrossed in independent music since joining ADA and working on the services side, I realized then, and I believe now still, that things could be better for artists, better for labels. The business could be better. It still has loads of room for improvement for independent artists. So leaving Warner came at a time, or I left Warner at a time when I had realized there was a bigger world out there than major labels, where I had really developed an affinity an appreciation for the independent sector, and I wanted to be part of it.
So let's talk then about you joining 11/7, because that was a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
And that at the time, I mean, I don't think is it a label now that's changed the name or something like that, but I know at the time it was a pretty it was hot shit. So getting that job was a pretty cool job within that sector to get, like, where you were coming to the club a lot. That was everyone for us that was coming to the club at that time was like a proper industry, sort of like you were in there. So there was people like you and Alan Day from Kilimanjaro and that were hanging out there quite regularly. And your position in that was a pretty fucking cool one within that group. So how did that job actually come about? Like, why did they approach you for it?
When I left Warner, I got a disc which says Master of Rock on it. The irony is that if you actually look at the disc, it's also got Major Lazer on there and Johnny Marr, which is obviously rock, but not rock. Yeah. Underneath is Paris of Mice and Men, Papa Roach. So whilst working at ADA, at the same time, I was responsible for Fearless, Hopeless, Epitaph, Rise, Mascot.
I remember you introducing me. I'm going off topic. This has only just come back to me. With Epitaph, there was the head of the label and somebody else.
Alan?
I genuinely can't remember. I just remember stood there dying, being like, please leave me alone. Because you were just like being really enthusiastic and really, like, it was really complimentary. But I just ripped like all my jeans open, so I was stood there with my ass hanging out.
So you managed to shit yourself, and
like I'd climbed over a fence, got caught on the fence.
Was this at Sandog?
No, it was at Rock in Belgium.
Okay, yes.
And
we'd all jumped the fence at Cruise Rock.
Yeah. We jumped the fence because we couldn't get in. We had the right pass, and we were just getting sent to different gates, and we were like, oh,
no one understands the passes at Cruise Rock. It's the most impossible system.
Literally, my jeans were ripped from like the belt loop to like my knee.
So you were trying to hold your trousers up, and I was trying to introduce you to people that you really wanted to meet.
You were trying. I was like shaking hands and having to swap hands, holding my trousers together.
Had they known that, they would have absolutely loved it. So we could have just told them that. Yeah. So look, I was looking after all of these independent labels, and now to define what I mean by looking after, in the distribution relationship, it was being the middleman between them who do not have offices in the market, and me who's here, but also. A label manager at a distribution company pretty much becomes an extra member of your team that you can utilize as much or as little as you wish. If the label wants to engage me, bring me into a meeting, with an artist and manager, that's great, but they don't have to. And most of them don't. But in the rock world where, the job, there's a lot of artists competing for the same fans.
Yeah.
So if I'm working on Rise, Epitaph and Fearless at the same time, then Fearless had Dexter over here, so they had someone in the market. But Rise and Epitaph didn't. Epitaph based in the Netherlands, and of course their home base being California. Actually, it was really valuable for them to bring me in to conversations.
Yeah.
Rise, not so much. Rise are very insular, but Epitaph in particular, 11/7 being another one, would want your input. And also it looks good for them because they get to say, okay, here's our rep from Warner.
Yeah.
Which, when you're working with, say, Papa Roach or Five Finger Death Punch, who are major artists, it's important for the label to show that they're doing everything they can to make the project a success, and anyone that they can bring along for the ride, so to speak, but it was actually my job to help them sell their records. So the job came about because I've been working on Papa Roach and Five Finger Death Punch at Warner ADA on behalf of 11/7. I was their label rep, and the record for Papa Roach was Fear, and we absolutely knocked it out of the park. We sold a bunch. We did a really good job, and after that, I was approached by Lewis, who's the brother of the owner. The owner, Alan, is a very big manager. Manages Blondie, manages Motley Crue. Manages Papa Roach, Five Finger Death Punch, and set up his label to facilitate his releases. He's a very smart man.
I thought it was something more to do with Papa Roach.
What do you mean?
I thought they were involved in the label, or I didn't think they were just signed to it.
No, so Papa Roach were managed by 10th Street. 10th Street is a sister company of 11/7,
Right.
which is now, I forget what it's called now. It's changed its name, but yeah. So what Alan set up is one of, if not the most successful management company record labels. It's it's a great business. They've done a fantastic job, and I was very lucky to be part of that for a while.
So what was your day-to-day role once you were actually at 11/7?
So my role was very much like at ADA really, but now specifically just working with one label. So it was facilitating the release of their records and coordinating European operations. We set up an office in Berlin, so spent a lot of time in Germany. I had quarterly trips to New York at the time, so I did 8 trips to New York in 2 years, which is a lot.
Nice.
Sounds good, but actually, New York's like London. It's like coming to Camden 8 times in a year is a bit much, isn't it?
The first time I went to New York is one of like the best memories of my life, and then I went back a couple weeks ago, and I was like, it's cool, but it's not what I remember. It's not that had changed. I think it's just that my like position in life had changed.
Well, you want new. You actually sometimes you forget how much we all want new experiences. Yeah. We may think we don't, but then you do something new, and you're like, oh wow, actually, why didn't I do that before?
Yeah.
And go to New York. I've already been to New York about 5 times anyway, so it was a lot. But my job working at 11/7 was primarily helping artists on the label, and indeed being sideswiped by the management company in a good way to say, how do we resolve these problems? How do we sell more records here? How do we elevate our artists from this position to this position?
So which campaigns did you work on then when you were there?
So there's Papa Roach Records, Five Finger Death Punch Records, Nelly Furtado. Took Nelly Furtado around Europe. Took Nikki Sixx to Europe with James Michael. He's got a bag with 6 a.m. Nikki, and I took them out to Berlin. Went to Stockholm first, but my rep in Stockholm got us to the airport too late, and I had to stay overnight with the bags while the artists went to Berlin on their own, which is a bit of a concern. But yeah, it's to use a horrible Americanism, which we don't use here, and I don't actually like, but it is a good description. Quarterbacking the records. Artists want people to give a fuck around them.
Yeah.
And when you're working for the management and the label, it's your job to give a fuck. It happens to be a great job if you like the music, which I did. So it was good. But yeah, actually turning up, being able to problem solve, letting the artists know that you as a company are doing everything possible to make their records meaningful and make the campaigns impactful.
So how connected to you then? Like how connected were you to the band when they were actually going through the thing? Like what was your day-to-day with the band?
Yeah, I mean, it depends entirely on the project. So 11/7 had a great structure in that every artist had a proper day-to-day manager, and the relationship between the management company and the label is, when you get to the independent world, it becomes very blurred. But actually, the structure is great when you have someone that is specifically on the artist side but isn't the artist, and someone on the label side who is not the owner of the label, because it means there's buffers.
Were there any big issues then that came up?
Only me.
And just causing problems?
No, but realistically, no. I mean, there are campaigns. When you're working on a rock album, the problems in Europe are probably the same now as they were then, which is, are the territories taking enough stock? Do we have enough stock in the first place? Have we got the right bundles? Will vinyl be delivered on time? Because the delays were crazy. We were when I started at Warner was 2007, and in 2008 this little green blob appeared on everyone's desktop, Spotify, which obviously has completely and fundamentally changed the business. But I joined before Spotify existed by 1 year, so I got my Spotify account the day that it opened in this market, which, I've got a playlist I built in 2008. That seems like a very long time ago now. But a lot of artists are keen music listeners, but don't necessarily pay attention to the mechanics of how other people are consuming music. Your job at a label is to make sure that you're delivering what the artist wants, but also getting the music to the consumers. and working out the best path to do that. It isn't necessarily difficult, but managing people is.
Is it better for you than the label, the manager, and everyone involved if the artist actually takes a vested interest in the business of the band and doesn't just sit there going, "Oh, it's your fucking job, I write music"?
It is infinitely better when the artist is interested, but there is a degree where it also becomes problematic if they are putting their opinion and their art above your knowledge of your job. I'm not saying that every label knows better and every artist is wrong. That's definitely not the case. Often the artists are right and the labels are wrong. But the reality is, if you're hired to do a job, you should be allowed to do it. And that's why I say the buffer of having a proper management company set up and a proper label set up is great. Because when it's one person that owns the label and the guy in the band or the girl in the band working together, problems happen. And I'm sure you've experienced things like this yourself, right?
Yeah, totally, man. I mean, which was the best band
The best
to work
band.
with then?
There wasn't a best band. All the artists have their quirks. It's not your job to play favourites. They are all your children. And I've been political, but, you know, I'm also not.
Well, I remember at the time you being really excited about Motley Crue and Nicky Six.
But who wouldn't be?
I mean, yeah, I agree.
When I worked at Warner, I looked after the New Order relationship, Joy Division.
Right.
And there's a very famous historic split between the band where you've got Peter Hook on one side and Bernard Sumner on the other side. These guys went to school together. They're in two of the world's most famous bands. They wrote Love Will Tear Us Apart and they wrote Blue Monday. What has gone down in their world, I turn up however many years after these records were written. I think Blue Monday came in 86. I was born in 86. So I'll come and work on this project now. I actually when I left Warner, I got a few of my artists and some people like Seymour Stein to write me a little reference for the back of my CV. And Peter Hook said, "Thank God for Gary, we couldn't have done it without him." Now, Peter Hook also absolutely hated me for ages because I was having to go against what he wanted and push back on him. But the result of me pushing back meant that we got records out. They made money. And actually, no artist is going to complain about making money, but every artist will complain if the records aren't coming out.
Yeah.
So historically, I mean, there's been too many artists to name that there's been problems with because every campaign has problems.
Who had the most problems?
That's a good question. Interestingly, the same problems arise with the really established bands and the brand new ones because they actually both have a disconnect from the reality of the industry. I actually don't know the answer to your question. It's tough. There's been a lot of campaigns and I've done a lot of different things. I mean, you know, I've had artists die mid-campaign.
Who died?
Lil Peep.
Oh fuck! Of course. Let's get onto that then, because is that where you moved after 11/7?
So,
or how come you left 11/7?
So I left 11/7 because my time was up. I was made redundant from the company. They brought someone else in. I think, upon reflection, I think the job was too much for me, but I didn't know that when I took it. And after 2 years, I was aware of it. Okay. So it was a very natural ending. And actually,
in what respect was it too much?
I think the expectation on the job was they needed someone far more experienced than me. And, you know, I was young and cocky at the time. So I was like, yeah, I can do it. But actually, you can't do everything. You may think you can. And guess what happens when you take that attitude all the time? You get burnt. And I got burnt. I burnt myself out. But also, you know, my performance wasn't what the company needed. But actually, my experience wasn't what the company needed, which is why my performance wasn't right. So they brought in someone who I think had been director at MTV for 15 years, like senior director, to replace my role, which was very much more day-to-day operations, getting shit done, versus big picture vision. I wasn't capable of doing that at the time. That's a learning curve which you can only get from experience. I was too young.
How old were you?
Cool. How old was I? 30-ish, 31, something like that.
You're that much older than me.
I'm 38. I'm 38.
You have to have been like younger than that then, because I
Maybe.
swear I was only like 23 at the time. And
So I left Warners in 2015, I think. So how old was I? 20? I don't know.
I don't know. I can't.
The thing is, Jack, I'm getting so old. I don't know how old I was back then.
You're only 3 years older than me. You must have been a bit younger than that.
Yeah, I must have been.
I'm sure that I was like 23.
Okay, so
that would have made you about like 26, 27.
So, yeah, that's probably right. Yeah, that's probably right. Yeah. The reality is, it was a good idea, and it did work for a while, but eventually the job transformed into a bigger thing, which I wasn't capable of doing. I didn't have the knowledge. I didn't have the expertise. What I did have was arrogance, which was wrong. Maybe arrogance is the wrong word. Cockiness. I don't think I was ever arrogant. Cocky, yes. Arrogant, I don't like that trait at all. It's important to know that you know something and be confident in knowing that you know it. But I actually got a job offer from First Access, which is Sarah Stennett's company, to go and work on the Lil Peep team before I was made redundant from 11/7.
Yeah.
But they both went down in the same week. So it was amazing. I literally finished 11/7 and the next week started, like literally finished on the Thursday, started on the Monday. I joined First Access to be part of the team that basically running the in-house label again, like the 11/7 setup. Lil Peep, who I met once, but was heavily involved in the campaign in terms of UK operations. The artist died before we could get to the end of the campaign. That is, I mean, what an incredible artist. What a devastating story.
Yeah, I mean, that's that's horrendous. I mean, that was a whole new sort of wave of music when
it was game changer. Yeah, it was the beginning.
Did that feel exciting then? Because I that was around the time I think when me and Lewis, who used to run UPRAWR, were taking less. We were putting less time into London, so we were coming down less, and we people like you were seeing less often. So although I really vividly remember all the excitement with you around 11/7, I don't really remember anything after that. Did that create the same sort of excitement? Because with that, you were going to something that was cool as fuck and acknowledged as cool as fuck.
Well, you have to put it in context of the company as well. Sarah is amazing. She's a badass female boss that has done incredible things for women in music, but for music in general. She's a legend. Her company managed, I don't actually know who's on the roster right now, but at the time, Zayn Malik, Ellie Goulding, Rita Ora, Lil Peep. I was there setting up, running the embryonic in-house label that they had set up. So being quite operations based, which I enjoy. And because of my knowledge of the rock world, Sarah wanted me to be part of her company because it would then be useful with the Peep world. Now, it was a revolution wasn't a revolution in terms of music sound, but it was a revolution in terms of the kids that liked this music kind of came out of a generation of music fans were born off the back of Lil Peep. And not every artist can say that that's happened to them, but to Lil Peep, it certainly did. Yeah. I remember when I was a kid and my partner's favorite band is Placebo, right? Placebo were a center of gravity for the Misfits. Lil Peep was the same thing, but this time it happened when the internet was here and when the world was far more connected and smaller. And so the community that came together around this artist was phenomenal. We're talking millions and millions of kids. Still to this day, I still get emails. I got one yesterday from Russian kids pretending to be my ex-colleagues at First Access, asking if I've got any Peep files still that I can send them because they've lost access to the drive. It's weird.
That's crazy, man. So I guess then at the label, you were completely feeling that. So what was your day-to-day involved in the campaign?
So as I say, I was very operational based then. So really what that was doing was applying the knowledge that I've got about best practices regarding releases, what to release, when to release it. Far less interesting than doing like day-to-day management stuff, but something I really enjoy is the nuts and bolts stuff. So for Peep, it was actually very ops based, but working within the team. And actually the key thing that I did was bring together the London rock world and some Germans to the Peep show in London. I ran the night, booked the back room with Visitors Academy, put a bar in there, basically got all the movers and shakers, if you will, to meet Sarah, who was not from the rock world, admittedly. I was a connector, a gopher, in a good way.
So is that when you met him?
I met him in the office. It was about First Access has a studio downstairs, and Sarah's partner George is a songwriter, and he's part of the Invisible Men, which is an amazing production team. And the Invisible Men were working with Gus, so Gus was in and out the office various times. You know, it's an interesting thing when you work for a label. You don't meet artists half as much as you think you would.
Yeah.
So so I met him. Did I spend a lot of time with him? No. Did I spend a lot of time with his music? Yes, absolutely. Campaign was where I live, not in the artist management world. So yeah, doing lots of stuff which on the face of it is boring, but making sure that the right people have got the music, making sure the music is scheduled to go out at the right time. Backroom operations at labels are the job of labels. Going for dinner or watching a gig or listening to an album is not the job of labels.
Yeah.
Getting the music out. As I said, no artist is going to complain and they're getting paid, but artists will complain if the records aren't coming out, and that's true no matter where you go.
Do you know if he was particularly involved in the mechanics of it all?
He was one of those artists that wanted the music out and would have put it out on SoundCloud for free if he could, and did. Problem with that is that the music may have cost a lot of money to make, or indeed the artist has expectations around their income, and indeed if the artist isn't getting paid, then the manager isn't getting paid, or the label's not getting paid. So actually this speaks to what labels are really meant to be good at, and what a good manager is actually helping an artist realize the junction between their artistic vision and their output, the creator output, and their ability to monetize that.
Do you think that music scene died when he did?
Yeah, totally. Because there were a slew of artists in his slipstream, people like Bexy, people like Fat Nick, who incredible artists in their own right, but they lost their gang leader, and no one came close. I mean, artists that come close to Peep were bigger than Peep in the first place, so people like Little Uzi Vert, but they were in a different league in the first place. The fact Gus was even compared to them is amazing for Lil Peep. But no, I do think that scene died. What were we calling it? Was it SoundCloud rap? Was that what we called it at the time? I don't know. Mumble rap was...
Mumble rap became like the recognised word, I guess.
Yeah.
What happened to the campaign then when that happened? What was the reaction?
I remember that when it happened, I think I woke up about 7:15, and my partner at the time was like, "Just in the news." I was like, "Broken up? Of course I was in the news. What are you about?" She was off out early, and I was like, "Just look at your phone." So obviously it's like, wow, like this doesn't happen every day. Terrible. You know what I thought? What hit me first was there are going to be an incredible amount of kids crying today because their hero has died. I cried. I didn't even know Gus very well. I cried for sure because you're emotionally invested in the campaign, and you know how much it means to other people. And it hit me pretty hard, that actually, and I wouldn't even say I was close to him at all.
Did it ever anyone else hurt? The other people involved in the campaign, and
and there was some kind of media controversy about nothing I can really particularly talk about because it's not something that is is true, but there was some. When an artist is on tour, if they are given drugs by a fan and they take the drugs, what can the manager in a different country do about that? It's a terrible situation. That's what happened. It's a terrible situation. And immediately, with grief comes questions. How did this happen? Why did it happen? That turned into a bit of a circus around the situation, which is unfortunate, because actually what really mattered here is that an incredible young kid had passed away, and an incredibly powerful drug, fentanyl, had struck yet again in America. We're so lucky that we don't have that drug in this country, because it would be a different world if we did. So yeah, it hit people very hard, and it's so unfortunate. It's an actual tragedy.
What did it mean for your job?
At that time, I left the company of my own choice. I actually moved out of London. I moved to Nottingham to go for work for Earache.
Oh fuck yeah, of course you did.
Yeah, and that was why.
So was that a emotional decision?
No, it was a. I think that, no, as you're not from London, you know full well that London is a great place to visit, but actually being here, put it this way, and actually I know you'll know this for sure. I was paying £1,000 a month for a room. I then moved to Nottingham, paid £900 a month for a 2-bedroom flat in the city centre, and still work for an amazing frontline record label. Yeah, it's important for personal growth and for your own sanity to get perspective on things, and I think it's important to take risks, actually, and it was a risk moving out. I moved back because I met a girl, but I left London at the right time. It was a difficult time for me personally for a number of reasons. The work thing didn't help, so I took myself out of London, and it was the right thing to do.
So joining Earache then, what was the deal with that? What was your job there?
So I was the general manager, which had no specific job description, but the interesting thing about record labels, people talk about the music industry. If we talk about the financial industry as a comparison, the financial industry is made up of different things, obviously. So you've got banks, insurance. They are all generally organizations. They're not one-man bands or one-woman bands. So the music industry has the same issue, in the sense that when someone says they are in the music industry, or they discuss the music industry, what are you talking about? You're talking about live? You're in the music industry. You have a club.
Yeah.
I'm in the music industry. I don't have a club. In fact, I've got nothing to do with live. In fact, live is where my knowledge is the least. But what differentiates the music business to the financial industry is that, unlike finance, where the companies are generally big with organizational structure, independent record labels are one person's vision. So when you join it, you join essentially working for one person who wants you to do what they want you to do. At a major label, you work for a company with a HR department and a team and a board and whatnot. It's very different. But I loved working at Earache. It was wild.
Who did you work with at Earache then? What was...
So the main thing I did at Earache was a lot more operational stuff. At the time, there was a chap called Dan Tobin who was the label manager. So I wasn't really doing campaign stuff. 2 things I did at Earache.
So what's the difference between label manager and general manager?
So Earache is a multifaceted business, right? It's got a merch company. It's got management division. It's got a very big web store. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on day to day which needs doing, which isn't running artist campaigns.
Yeah.
That's just one string on the bow. So Dan was doing that, and Dan's amazing at that. And in fact, I worked with Earache whilst at ADA, like I did with Level 7. So, and Dan was the person I contacted. You know, he has an absolutely incredible knowledge of rock music across Europe, across the world actually, So there was no need for me to get involved in that. I signed Those Damn Crows.
I remember.
Yeah. I signed a Misfits record. We licensed the Misfits record from Warner's and sold a bunch. Did some colorways. Amazing. Also worked really closely with the web store team to completely overhaul their D2C business to make sure that all of the outlets that we worked with were firing, basically increasing sales, increasing revenue, and reducing crap in the way. So operational based.
You helped develop the management division.
Yeah.
What was that?
So they didn't have a management division at the time. But it was very clear that, and it's obvious when you look at a record label really that, you know, what their job is exploiting. A record label's job is to exploit masterworks. Now, recordings. Well, actually, that's one piece of the pie. Managing an artist is very different from releasing the records of an artist. Each has their own set of income streams from different things, different parts of the song. So if you are a songwriter, you're receiving mechanical royalties, but you may not have performed on the song, which means that there's live performance royalties, which you don't get. So there's a whole other world, which is producer management, where actually the producer is normally on points, may get some money up front or maybe pay for their studio time, but generally is using the studio they've got and their songwriting prowess to help bands create records, and then they're forever earning a royalty on it from the label and also earning, you know, publishing. So we worked out, there was a chap called Mike Exeter who worked with it. Do you know Mike?
Yeah, know him well. He's an ambassador for our charity.
Well, there we go. So I signed Mike at the same time as signing Those Damn Crows.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Because he works in the little bit at the start.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He produced the songs that we did with 1000 Lights at the Utilita.
Yeah, Mike's great. Mike's got a really great story. He's had him on here. He's a really, really interesting chap. And, you know, he's had personal struggles, which, you know, I think he's a really good ambassador for that as well. Like for actually, he's a great person for male mental health conversations.
Yeah, I mean, that's why he's an ambassador for the mental health charity, and he's done talks and stuff that we've been part of. I think he might have given a talk at our first seminar that we did a few years ago.
Yeah.
So you were then managing the producers.
Well, we managed Mike. So really, what that job entails is you're essentially out there touting them for work.
Yeah.
That's all that job is. But then also on the back end, it's accounting, making sure that they're receiving all the money they should have been receiving. I think that music industry is just terrible for, you know, paper trails being lost, and management is a job of clearing your desk.
Yeah.
Clearing an artist's desk. Clearing an artist's bedroom floor, actually, not a desk.
That was literally the reason Jamie Osmond gave for wanting to set up his management with Rosie. Because his thing was like, I've got the creative vision, but I don't clear up after myself. And from a, you know, an organizational point of view, like leaving invoices unsorted and stuff like that. And he was just like, his thing was like, I couldn't set this up if I didn't have somebody else backing me up that was actually going to be on top of shit.
I feel it. Yeah. And actually, I wish I had a Rosie in that respect, because she's great. I've actually not worked with her directly, but everything I'm aware, you know, I've met her a few times, and, you know, by all accounts, she, you know, runs in the family over there, right? But, you know, ultimately, Jamie's completely right. It doesn't work if you don't do the other bit. And that's actually what I was getting at when I was talking about the buffer. Because if you left the owner of independent record labels and the artist to get shit done, you'd end up, I mean, I don't know if you know much about Factory Records. Not
much, like just the highlights.
Watch the film 24 Hour Party, people, and come back to me. Okay? It's an amazing story of a British independent record label who signed New Order, who worked for Joy Division, who had, you know, I think the Joy Division contract was written in the owner's blood on a bit of paper. And I think the contract said, artists have the right to fuck off. It's an amazing story. Please look it up. Tony Wilson was the guy's name. But yeah, it would all be like that if you didn't do the other bit. And the other bit is the important bit. Like, you can go to dinners and watch bands and talk about signing shit all you like. But if you don't put out records and collect the income, no one's getting paid, and then there's no industry.
Have you ever wanted to start your own record label?
Well, I've got my own distribution company. I did start a record label, and I actually signed Harry Jennings' first band.
Oh, really?
Yeah, way back when. I started my label with a guy called Tom Beck, who I haven't spoken to for ages, but certainly is absolutely is a very good friend of mine, but was at the time someone I was knocking about with. He was at Universal, I was at Warner, and we both set up our little rock label. We signed 2 bands. One was Cytota, which was Harry's band, and the other band was a band called the Dead Wretched, who are from Wales, managed by Ryan Richards, who you know.
Yeah.
And I think there's a connection to a very big arena level band right now, but as they all wear masks, I can't tell you who it is.
Give the connection without saying the.
Well, so there's a very big band that wear masks, and one of the guys that I worked with in one of the artists I signed to my label has now joined that band.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, but as they wear masks and are anonymous, it would be unfair of me to even say their name.
Yeah, fair enough. I think I know who you're talking about anyway. When you left Earache then, where did you go after that?
So I left Earache to come back to London, and I'd met my partner, and it's wild to think that pre-COVID, even the concept of working remotely was not happening.
No.
Like, it was not a thing. Now it's the norm.
Yeah.
And I regret really that, it went down in that order. Nothing anyone could have done about it or foreseen. But I left Earache, came back to London, started working for an independent distribution company where I absolutely knocked it out of the park. In fact, I signed one of Jamie's bands and we had an 8-week run on the Radio 1 playlist.
Who was that?
For the Prototypes.
Okay.
Drum and bass act from Brighton. Couldn't have predicted that would go that way because Greg James picked the track and just ran with it. But we absolutely nailed it. I did loads of great things at that company, and I was made redundant, and it sucked. I feel anger.
Was that Kartel?
That was Kartel. Yeah, that was a unfortunate. I feel that didn't end in a very good way because actually, I think I really over delivered there. Did some really great work.
Who else did you work with there?
So,
and was that the same sort of job?
What culminated at Kartel was actually a bit of a change of gear. So, whereas before, when I said about my lack of knowledge and expertise wasn't what was needed at 11/7 at the time, the job needed to be elevated, and I wasn't ready for that. At Kartel's way, that really came for me. Where I actually now, here's where I should. If I'd have been here then, it would have been a very different outcome.
Right.
I was essentially working my knowledge of the industry, having worked with all these great labels at ADA, had worked with all these great artists and managers for my various jobs, to bring that all together now into business development, which in terms of distribution company means hitting up managers, hitting up labels, hitting up artists and saying, hey, what's going on? Got anything for us? So indirectly, or thanks to my connections, we signed Kat Von D. We signed Wolfgang Van Halen, huge record in America. We signed Periphery's label, including the Periphery catalogue. Did some good stuff. Prototypes 8 weeks on Radio 1 is amazing.
So with that ending then, why was that not good? What happened?
It was just the way that it went down. Like, I actually enjoyed working there, but that actually comes back down to what I was saying about working for a one man's dynasty when you work in the independent sector. Because if, as much as I disagree with the reason given, I wholeheartedly accept that if the boss of a company no longer wishes to work with someone, they should really have the right to change that.
Yeah.
It was my time.
So what would you then say is the highlight for you of the career? Or if there was a point you could go back to, which point would you want to relive?
I went to Glastonbury one year and I was asked to escort Noah Rogers around site for the weekend, which meant being in charge of the golf buggy around Glastonbury with Noah Rogers. Fucking Noah Rogers. Come on. And there was a moment where Glastonbury used to have BBC used to have a tower next to the pyramid stage. You have to climb up, and it was a viewing platform, but they had the One show was being presented live. So being stood watching the One show being broadcast live from the broadcast tower at Glastonbury with Noah Rogers was what an amazing experience. Johnny Marr was also in the room at the same time because he was playing, and actually Johnny's son is called Niall after Noah Rogers. So it was a bit of a meeting of minds there, which is amazing to see. yeah, that's a highlight. Taking Happy Mondays to be on this morning, that was good. With Holly Willoughby and Philip Schofield at the time. Seeing Bez and, just seeing Bez in general was always a highlight. But yeah, the Music Week Awards got to be one of the highlights.
You should have brought that in, man. I've never seen one in person.
It's fucking heavy. Yeah, there's no way we'd have brought that. You come down to Hastings, you can just see it.
I'll come down, man. Is there anything then, before we wrap up, that sort of advice that you would give to somebody that was starting off in the way that you did, and sort of a career path that you think?
I've made lots of mistakes in my career. I don't think I've fucked anything up for anyone. But on a personal level, the industry is very capable and very good at chewing people up and spitting them out. And, it's important, I think, to support your friends and to be there for people, because you never know when you're going to need it yourself. And actually, if I could go back and change things, I would have probably spent less time worrying about my career and more time worrying about the people around me, because I think that actually that would have paid dividends for now where I find myself wondering where everyone is.
Yeah.
And but maybe that's also a 2024 thing, Don't be afraid to follow the path that you know to be correct when people are telling you that you're wrong, if you know that you're right. Because actually, at the end of the day, getting things done properly and doing it the right way is more important than being told to do it a different way, fucking it up, and then not feeling like you've achieved anything. It's important. It's very important to believe in yourself.
That's true, man. I think that is important. Most of the things that I do, people are just like, are you fucking mad?
There's the one thing we haven't spoken about. Listen, you and Lewis, when you set up UPRAWR, when the first time I went to the club in Birmingham, was blown away because of the effort that you put in.
Yeah.
I said about artists want people that give a fuck?
Yeah.
That's the energy. Remember when I managed the band The 100?
Yes.
We took this band from not even having a name to selling thousands of an EP, signing to a major record label, supporting Motley Crue in arenas. And I think for a minute we started to change the world. That fell apart. Bands change their mind. Record labels have influence. That's actually the best advice you could give. When you're working with a team or you're working on a project and you bring in outside partners who wish to help, they want you to deviate from the plan that you know is the way to success, don't let them do it.
So what happened specifically then with the 100? Because I only sort of half remember it being like they're breaking up or they're not doing something, or I can't really...
Well, what happened there was regretful all round. I actually spoke to Jacob 3 weeks ago. He and I catch up now and then anyway. But at the time, the band, I think he even would admit this, that they were a little bit drunk on their own success, in the sense that we brought on board Mark, who is Paramore's manager, to be part of the team. And the label told the band that they should just get rid of me and keep with Mark, which they did. What then happened, though, is when Mark found out, he basically dropped the band. So they had no manager.
Right.
Then they got dropped by the agent. So then now the band's got no manager, no agent, and the label have just, it fell apart. It didn't work. The machine stopped working. Why? Because the operational stuff wasn't being done. It was regretful, because that band were bloody great.
Yeah, they were awesome.
But now you look back and you go, what a great time we had. Because I was sleeping in the back of a van, transit van, on a blow-up bed, 6 people trying to eat 3 people's buffet from a Premier Inn, because we don't want to pay for 6 people's breakfast. Things you do when you're young that you wouldn't do now, but you look back and you go, what a great time. Playing festivals, I haven't been to a festival for a while. Are they good anymore? I don't know.
Other than, to be fair, I went to Day and Load. But the only festival I go to now, like religiously, is Slam Dunk.
I haven't been for a while, but yeah, absolutely fantastic. And you look at that and you go, that is another great example of people giving a fuck. Ben hasn't tried to do anything, Ben and JD, right, haven't tried to do anything crazy. What they've done is they've taken what they know and they've done it amazingly well, to the point where people are desperate to play Slam Dunk still. Good for them. Amazing job.
Yeah, I mean, that's the perfect example of a small company that
gives a fuck.
It's everything to them.
Where I'm at now, right, is I have my own little distribution company, and I've been working on a platform which I've personally developed, which is all the things that fall between the cracks for artists. Say you're a manager or an artist yourself, self-managing, and you've got a release, you've got artwork, you've got some paperwork. What are you doing with this? Maybe you've got some on Dropbox, some on Google Drive, it's on the phone. Amount of times of an artist has gone, oh, can we get this done? It's like, okay, cool, send me the file. Don't know where it is. Well, I've attempted to fix that by building this portal which brings it all together. I think the future here in independent music services lies not in providing distribution or selling PR, but actually in helping bands and artists and managers organise their shit. The digital Rosie.
What are you calling it?
Well, it doesn't really have a name yet. I've got relayed.net, which is my domain, which I've currently got that, which I'll probably use for it. It's a good domain. But Sound Belief was its working title. I've had soundbelief.com. Phase.in, had that one for a minute. But I'm aiming to, in Q1 next year, launch this, which is it really is. This is not like AI stuff. Here's a web portal where your catalog exists with the paperwork that goes with it, all the files that go with it. One click to make a one sheet, one click generate a report, one click for your sales. Bring all your data in from all your different distribution partners, from your publishing information, process all the data. It's a digital toolbox that artists need. And having done all the jobs I've done, I know that managers and labels need. So it's exciting.
Cool, man.
Check it out sometime.
I will. Send me a link whenever there's something we can look at. That sounds pretty cool. I think we're just about out of time, but thank you so much for coming on, man. It's been really interesting talking.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you to everyone that's watched. If you want to listen to us, we are on Spotify and everywhere else you can get a podcast. I don't actually know where those places are, but follow, rate and review if you can, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks, guys.